April 10th stretches across 13 centuries of lawmaking, volcanoes, inventions, compassion, migration, literature, war, technology, music, and peacebuilding. We'll watch Parliament wrestle with ownership, villagers stare up at ash-darkened skies, inventors twist wire into simple genius, advocates fight for animals, passengers wave goodbye to Southampton quays, writers chase the American dream, soldiers liberate a battered port, sailors search for a lost submarine, fans process a beloved band's split, and negotiators turn conflict toward compromise. Let's rewind. This is your This Day in History. On April 10, 1710, the Statute of Anne took effect across Britain, transferring legal control of printed works from the Stationers' Company to the authors who conceived them. In London coffeehouses, pamphleteers read the preamble aloud, noting Parliament's argument that learning should flourish when writers, not guilds, receive the profits. The Act granted an initial 14-year term, renewable once, provided copies were deposited in university libraries to spread knowledge. Master printers fretted over lost monopolies, while booksellers recalculated prices for newly empowered authors seeking better contracts. Across the Atlantic, colonial booksellers studied the statute, sensing it foreshadowed debates over intellectual property in the growing empire. Legal historians now trace modern copyright frameworks back to that April Compromise between creators, commerce, and the public good. On April 10, 1815, Mount Tambora erupted violently in the Dutch East Indies, unleashing one of Earth's most powerful recorded volcanic blasts. Dutch officials on Sumbawa logged the tremors and cannon-like booms, realizing the stratovolcano had shifted from rumbling to cataclysm. Ash and pumice blanketed villages as sailors navigated by feel through what survivors described as ink-black noon. High-altitude aerosols swept westward on tropical winds, scattering sunlight and lowering temperatures across the hemisphere. European savants soon matched distant red sunsets and sulfuric snowfalls to Tambora's plume, building the young science of volcanology. By the following summer, failed harvests and famine in North America and Europe testified to that April eruption's global reach. On April 10, 1849, inventor Walter Hunt secured a U.S. patent for the safety pin, pledging the device to settle a modest debt. His drawing showed a clever spiral spring that kept the clasp closed and shielded the sharp point, simple enough to form by hand. Dressmakers quickly adopted the pin for quick fittings, praising how it spared fingertips compared with bare needles and straight pins. Pushcart vendors bundled the new fasteners in paper envelopes, turning Hunt's improvised solution into a ubiquitous household staple. Word of the patent sped via telegraph, inspiring factories to experiment with brass wire winding machines for consistent coils. From diapers to battlefield bandages, generations have relied on that April contrivance whenever a durable temporary fix is needed. On April 10, 1866, Henry Bergh persuaded the New York legislature to charter the American Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals. Newspapers reprinted the charter's pledge to prosecute abuses against carriage horses, livestock yards, and companion animals alike. Within weeks, uniformed agents patrolled Manhattan streets, issuing citations to drivers who whipped or overloaded their teams. Bergh debuted one of the nation's first animal ambulances, a padded wagon designed to rescue horses that collapsed on cobbled avenues. Humane education lectures entered city classrooms, pairing moral lessons with practical advice on feeding and rest for working animals. Today's shelters, spay-neuter clinics, and cruelty hotlines still trace their mandate to that April legislation. On April 10, 1912, RMS Titanic eased away from Southampton, beginning her maiden voyage that blended engineering ambition with society-page spectacle. Travel writers chronicled the marble staircases and Turkish baths, while stewards memorized the needs of Astors, Guggenheims, and everyday travelers alike. Below decks, firemen and trimmers fed 29 boilers, driving the triple-screw propulsion that made Titanic the largest moving object yet built. Spectators dotted the Solent shoreline as tugboats guided the liner toward the English Channel under an untroubled spring sky. At Cherbourg that evening, White Star tenders ferried additional passengers and sacks of Royal Mail aboard the brightly lit hull. Irish emigrants joined in Queenstown the next day, waving farewell before the ship turned west into the open Atlantic. On April 10, 1925, Charles Scribner's Sons published F. Scott Fitzgerald's novel, The Great Gatsby, packaging it with Francis Cugat's haunting cover art. Booksellers stacked the slim volume on front tables, hoping Fitzgerald's Jazz Age fame would convert browsers into buyers. Fitzgerald, writing from the French Riviera, wired friends about poor advance sales, even as he revised stories to promote the novel. Readers encountered Jay Gatsby's opulent Long Island soiree as a mirror for class aspiration, longing, and reinvention. Critics filed mixed notices, praising the prose but questioning its commercial appeal during a post-war publishing glut. Decades later, classrooms adopted the text as a core portrait of the Roaring Twenties, vindicating that April release. On April 10, 1944, the Red Army's 3rd Ukrainian Front liberated Odessa after 2.5 years of brutal Axis occupation. Local partisans surfaced from hidden catacombs to guide Soviet columns through mined streets and booby-trapped squares. Retreating forces tried to cripple the port, leaving mangled cranes and scuttled ships along the Black Sea harbor. Field hospitals treated malnourished residents alongside wounded soldiers, underscoring the civilian toll of occupation. Dispatches crackled back to Moscow, where commanders highlighted the strategic reopening of a major warm-water port. Engineers and citizens immediately set about clearing explosives and restoring tram lines, symbolizing a battered city's return to life. On April 10, 1963, the nuclear submarine USS Thresher was lost during deep dive trials off New England, killing all 129 aboard. During the test descent, control room logs captured a rapid sequence of power fluctuations as the crew struggled to halt an unplanned fall. Investigators later concluded that a burst pipe likely shorted electrical systems, preventing the ballast blow needed to surface. Navy ships and aircraft scoured the North Atlantic, eventually finding debris nearly 8,400 feet below the waves. Court of Inquiry officers pored over metallurgical reports, determining that quality control lapses had compounded the failure. The disaster prompted the SubSafe program, a rigorous certification regime that still governs submarine construction and maintenance. On April 10, 1970, Paul McCartney circulated a Q&A press release that confirmed he was no longer working with the Beatles, effectively announcing the group's breakup. Inside Apple Corps, lawyers weighed the financial fallout while the other 3 Beatles issued carefully worded statements, urging calm. British tabloids raced out afternoon editions, pairing screaming headlines with photos from the band's mop-top beginnings. Outside Savile Row, fans gathered to leave flowers, letters, and pleas for one more rooftop concert that would never come. Disc jockeys stitched together oral retrospectives, segueing from Abbey Road harmonies into early mixes from upcoming solo albums. In the years that followed, each Beatle pursued distinct musical paths, Yet that April press note cemented the end of an era. On April 10, 1998, negotiators in Belfast concluded the Good Friday Agreement, creating a power-sharing framework to end decades of conflict in Northern Ireland. U.S. Senator George Mitchell read the intricate text clause by clause as Unionist, Nationalist, and British Irish officials initialed their consent. Morning editions traveled rapidly between Belfast, Derry, and Dublin, explaining new institutions like the Assembly, executive, and cross-border bodies. Weeks later, voters north and south ratified the deal by large margins, signaling popular commitment to the peace forged that April day. From statutes and ships to volcanoes, submarines, and peace accords, April 10th shows how human ambition, error, creativity, and resolve share the calendar. Until tomorrow, this was This Day in History.